Welcome back, my dear students. In our marketing management course, chapter 5, we will divide this chapter for part 1 and part 2. This chapter about the consumer markets and the consumer buyer behavior. After reading this chapter, you should be able to define the consumer market and construct simple model of the consumer buyer behavior, tell how cultural, subculture, and social class influence consumer buying behavior. Describe how consumers' personal characteristics and primary psychological factors affect their buying decisions. Discuss how consumer decision making varies with the type of buying decision. Explain the stages of the buyer decision and adoption processes. The learning objectives of this chapter: defining the consumer market and construct a simple model of consumer behavior, and name the 4 major factors that influence the consumer behavior. We will talk about these 2 objectives in part 1. The consumer buying behavior definition refers to the buying behavior of final consumers, individuals, and households who buy goods and services for personal consumption. Study consumer behavior to answer: how do consumers respond to marketing efforts the company might use? And the definition of the consumer markets are made up of all the individuals and households that buy or acquire goods and services for personal consumption. This chapter explores the dynamics of consumer behavior in the consumer market. Consumer buying behaviors refer to the buying behavior of final consumers, individuals, and households that buy goods and services for personal consumption. All of these final consumers combined make up the consumer market. The world consumer market consists of about billion people, but the billion people living in North and West America, Europe, and Japan make up 7% of the world's spending power. They also buy an incredible variety of goods and services. How these diverse consumers make their choices among various products embraces and many nationalities array of factors. This is the model of consumer behavior. This model consists of the 4 P's or the marketing mix: product, price, place, promotion, and the environment factors like economic, technological, political, cultural. And in the second stage, we have the buyer's black box that included the buyer's decision process and the characteristics affecting consumer behavior. Then in the third and the end stage, we have the buyer's response: product choice, brand choice, dealer choice, and the purchase timing and the purchase amount. The marketer wants to understand how the stimuli are changed into characteristics influence how he or she perceived and responds inside the consumer's black box, which has two parts. First, the buyer's characteristics influence how he or she perceived and react to the stimuli. Second, the buyer's decision process itself affects the buyer's behavior. This chapter first looks at the buyer characteristics and they affect the buying behavior and then examines the buyer decision process. We will never know what exactly is in the black box or be able perfectly to predict consumer behavior, but the models can help us implement the consumers, help us to ask the right questions, and teach us how to influence them. In this slide, we have the characteristics affecting the consumer behavior. The consumer purchases are influenced strongly by cultural, social, personal, and psychological characteristics as shown in this figure. For the most part, marketers cannot control each such factors, but they must take them into account. We illustrate these characteristics for the ease of hypothesis consumer. Many characteristics in her background will affect the way she evaluates and chooses a brand. The cultural factors here exert the broadest and deepest influence on the consumer behavior. The marketer needs to understand the role played by the buyer's cultural, subcultural, and the social cultural. We have here the cultural and social, personal, and the psychological factors that affect on the buyer. Here in the first factors affecting the consumer behavior, the cultural, most basic cause of person's wants and behavior that included values, perceptions, the subcultural groups of people with a shared value systems based on common life experiences, and the social classes. People within a social class tend to exhibit similar buying behavior, like the factors of occupation, income, education, wealth. The cultural here is the most basic cause of person's wants and behavior. The human behavior is largely learned. Growing up in society, a child learns basic values, perceptions, wants, and behaviors from the family and other important institutions. Like most people in her childhood. The definition of the culture is the set of basic values, perceptions, wants, and behaviors learned by a member of society from family and other important institutions. The subculture are groups of people within a culture with shared value systems based on common life experiences and situations. The social classes are society's relative, permanent, and ordered divisions whose members share similar values, interests, and behaviors. Some class systems have a greater influence on buying behavior than others in some countries. Lower classes may exhibit upward mobility, showing buying behavior similar to that the upper classes, but in other cultures where a caste system gives people distinctive rule, buying behavior is more family linked to social classes. The upper classes in almost all societies are often more similar to each other than they are to the rest of their own society. When selecting products and services, including food, clothing, household items, and personal care products, they make choices that are less cultural bound than those of lower classes. Generally, the lower social classes are more cultural bound, although young people of all classes are less so. Then we have the second factors affecting consumer behavior is the social factor. The social factors included the groups like membership, reference, family, like husband, wife, kids, influencer, buyer, user, and the rules and status. All these are social factors. A consumer's behavior is also influenced by social factors such as the consumer's small groups, family, and social rules and status. Because these social factors can strongly affect the consumer responses, companies must take them into account when designing the marketing strategies. The social factors include the groups and social networks like the membership groups, groups with direct influence and to which person belongs, aspirational groups, groups an individual wishes to belong to, and the reference group, these groups that form a comparison or reference in forming attitudes or behavior. Groups and social networks, like for example, online social networks, social media sites, virtual worlds, word of mouth, opinion leaders, and the family is the most important consumer buyer organization in society. Rules and states can be defined by a person's position in a group. In this slide is the third factor affecting the consumer behavior is the personal factors. The personal factors influences age and family life cycle stage, economic situation, occupation, personality, and self-concept. A buyer's decisions are also influenced by personal characteristics such as the buyer's age and life cycle stage, occupation, economic situation, lifestyle, and the personality and self concept. The age and life cycle stage, people change the goods and services they buy over their lifetimes. This includes clothes, furniture, and recreation are often age related. Buying is also shaped by the family life cycle, the stages through which families might pass as they mature over time. The stages of the family life cycle marked years often define their target markets in terms of life cycle stage and develop appropriate products and marketing plans for each stage. And we have here the life cycle identification included activities, opinions, interests. Psychological life cycle stages have also been identified. Adults experience certain passages as they through life, thus move from being a satisfied brand manager and wife to being unsatisfied person searching for a new way to fulfill herself. Such as change may have stimulated her strong interests in photography. The main stimuli to people taking photographs are holidays, making the progression through the life cycle, wedding, and so on, and having children to take photographs of it. Marketeers must pay attention to the changing buying interests that might be associated with these adult passages. Characteristics affecting the consumer behavior include the personal factors. The personal factors here, like age and life cycle, occupation that affects the goods and services bought by the consumers, and economic situations include trends in spending, personal income, saving, interest rate, and the life cycle is a person's pattern of living as expected in his or her psychology. Personality refers to the unique psychological characteristics that distinguish a person or from the factors affecting the consumer behavior is the psychological factors. Psychological factors include motivation, perception, learning, beliefs, and attitudes. A person's buying choices are further influenced by four important psychological factors like motivation, perception, learning, and beliefs and attitudes. In the motivation, we know that people became interested in buying a camera. Why? What is she really seeking? What need it trying to satisfying it? A person has many needs at any given time. Some are biological, arising from states of tension such as hunger, thirst, or discomfort. Others are psychological, arising from needs to recognition, esteem, or belonging. Most of these needs will not be strong enough to motivate the person to act at a given point in time, and it becomes a motive when it's aroused to a significant level of intensity. A motive or drive is a need that is sufficiently presenting in directing the person to seek satisfaction. In the psychological factors, we have a motive or drive is a need that is sufficiently present to direct the person to seek satisfaction of the need, and the motivation research refers to the qualitative research designed to probe consumers' hidden subconscious motivations. In the psychological factors, we have the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It included the psychological needs, then the safety needs, social needs, esteem needs, and self actualization needs. In the psychological factors, we have the perception is the process by which people select, organize, and interpret information to form a meaningful picture of the world. We have three types of the perception: selective attention, selective distortion, selective retention. In the selective attention is the tendency for people to screen out most of the information to which they are exposed. Selective distortion. The second type is the selective distortion is the tendency for people to interpret information in a way that will support what they already believe. And in the selective retention is the tendency to remember good points made about a brand they favor and forget good points about competing brands. In the learning is the change in an individual's behavior arising from experience and occurs through the interplay of drives, stimuli, cause responses, reinforcement. All these included in the psychological factors. Here we end the first part of chapter 5 and we will